expensive perfumes with base notes of ambergris. Perfumes in this collection can sell for around $500 a bottle and are described as a passionate love letter in fragrant form. And while ambergris has all the makings for a great perfume, what really drives up the price tag is simply how rare it is. Scientists don't know exactly why, but only about
Rabble Rabble show, I got chat to them, I made them chat for it. Rabble Rabble, you don't know say the one and only National Rabble Danger, and on this platform we do things different. Rabblings, right now I'm here and I can tell you that I smell expensive. And I know that everyone also love to smell expensive. Agree or disagree? Let me know. A woman love to know her man smell good, and a man love to know that a woman smell good. Nobody want to know that them partners smell like. Rabblings, would you believe me if I tell you that one of the things that make us smell good is ambergris? Rabblings, ambergris is actually whale shit. God know that make us smell good. Ambergris is one of the ingredients that is in expensive cologne. Rabblings, they say sometimes negative bring positive. Same way yeast, the fungus used in your favorite beer. Did you know that? So Rabblings, next time you step out and you smell good and you drink a beer, remember this. Rabble Rabble, straight Rabblings, pre this.
This is ambergris. It might look like a rock, but it's actually a rare kind of whale poop. And it's not cheap. Per gram, ambergris can cost more than silver, 30 times more. If you've ever worn perfume, well, I've got some unsettling news. You may have misted yourself with animal waste. You see, for centuries, perfumers have been using ambergris to enhance their fragrances. It's essentially a clump of squid beaks, bound by a fatty secretion. Over time, it balls up in the intestine of some sperm whales, and eventually, out it goes. Now, in the strictest sense, it's not technically poop, but scientists think it exits the same way, if you catch my drift.
One way or another, a big boulder of ambergris is released into the ocean and then floats for decades, who knows how long.
And in that time, the mass transforms from a sticky dung-like substance into a hard gray chunk. And this, believe it or not, is what perfumers covet. For one, it contains a unique chemical that works as a fixative, which means it makes other smells in perfume last longer. But ambergris is also valued for something incredibly surprising. Apparently it smells good.
It's like a bouquet of 20 or 30 different chemical compounds. Each have their own odor profile. One will smell sort of like mushrooms, one will smell a little bit like tobacco, one smells like poop, one smells sort of like grass and hay.
Sounds great. Well, apparently perfume designers use strong scents like those as the base note for their fragrances. And base notes form the foundation of any perfume. One company in particular has several expensive perfumes with base notes of ambergris. Perfumes in this collection can sell for around $500 a bottle and are described as a passionate love letter in fragrant form. And while ambergris has all the makings for a great perfume, what really drives up the price tag is simply how rare it is. Scientists don't know exactly why, but only about 1% of sperm whales produce this substance. In fact, researchers like Dr. Shane Garrow, who spend years studying sperm whales, never end up seeing it.
I've been collecting sperm whale poo for 15, 16 years, and I haven't ever collected anything that I was like, oh, maybe this is, a tiny little ambergris ball.
Sometimes lucky beachgoers will stumble upon it. In 2006, for example, a couple picked up a 32-pound piece on a beach in Australia. Media outlets later reported that it could be worth nearly $300,000. But more often, ambergris hunters will get to it first. They track weather patterns and ocean currents to predict where it might end up. And once they find it, they sell it to brokers or perfumers for up to $7,200 a pound.
This is like gold to them. This is a real commodity, so they take it very seriously. They can be a bit aggressive, muscular, and they really closely guard their secrets.
But the commodity's high price isn't the only reason they do it. In some countries, like the US, buying, selling, or even collecting ambergris is illegal. That's because sperm whales are an internationally threatened species.
Before whaling started actively, both historical and modern whaling, there was over 1 million sperm whales, and now we're down closer to a fifth of that.
And while no whales are harmed in the collection of ambergris, Garrow says that it's never a good idea to buy or sell products from an endangered species. But until we can replicate something that smells as good as that whale poop, people will probably keep buying and selling ambergris.
I think people that don't make beer would be shocked to know what a beautiful, complex process it is. There's basically 5 things that go into beer. There's the water, the malt, hops, the yeast, and then finally you have the brewer managing all that, because the same brewer can take all those same 4 ingredients, and depending on the temperatures and timing at each step, he can make a completely different beer. Yeast create the ethanol that's present in beer and wine and distilled spirits. A lot of people think brewers make beer, but they don't. Yeast make beer. Brewer's yeast is probably the oldest domesticated organism. And human beings have been capturing it and propagating it for different purposes for thousands of years. I'm Jim Withy, and I'm the owner of Giga Yeast Inc. I've been a scientist most of my career. I have a PhD in yeast genetics. In the 1990s, brewer's yeast, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, was the first eukaryotic genome to be sequenced. It was a really important advancement in science. Much of what we know about human health comes from the study of model organisms. Brewer's yeast is a single cell that's like one of those cells in the human body, so it's easier to study, it's easy to manipulate the genes. Cancer, cell signaling, even heart disease has been learned in brewer's yeast. So the process of brewing starts by grinding the malt, and he needs to extract the sugar and the protein from it. The malt is usually a barley or a wheat. It has to be grown to the right stage, germinated until the sugars start to break down, and then the germination has to be stopped by heat. The longer you heat a grain, the darker the malt gets, and darker malts have tastes of chocolate and coffee. Lighter malts are more acidic. So it goes into a mash tun where it's heated in the presence of water. As the water is heated, enzymes in the malt are activated that actually break down the more complex sugars and proteins. After that stage, the extract from the malt is drained into a kettle and it's boiled in the presence of hops. Hops are bred for a huge variety of flavors and aromas and bitterness, and added at different stages during the brewing process to have different effects. One of the earliest contributions that brewer's yeast made to human health happened sometime about 120 years ago. A lot of prominent scientists were interested in the nature of fermentation. One of them was a French scientist named Louis Pasteur. He realized that when the wine and beer tasted correct, there was only one microorganism present under the microscope, and it was yeast. When it tasted poorly, sour or skunky or other off flavors, he was noticing all kinds of other smaller microorganisms. Louis Pasteur was able to formulate the theory that there were actually small microorganisms in the environment, in our food, water, and in our air that were making people sick. He realized immediately that if you just boiled or superheated food or water, you could sanitize it to the point where it would no longer make people sick. The process of sanitizing solutions by boiling is now named pasteurization after Louis Pasteur. Once the wort, that's what it's known as, once it's boiled in the kettle, is finished, it's cooled off, usually through a heat exchanger, and piped to a fermenter, and that's when the yeast is pitched. A lot of people ask, how do you grow yeast? We cultivate yeast by storing them first at minus 80 degrees centigrade. From there, they're thawed and then they're streaked onto auger plates where we pick single colonies, and then they're grown up in liquid media in larger and larger phases. And from there, they're pitched into our propagation tanks where they're grown up large scale. Each of our tanks will make enough for about a 40-barrel pitch of beer, which is around 2,000 gallons. And the yeast begin converting this really sweet, syrupy, hoppy beverage into something completely different. Brewer's yeast ferment to ethanol. Fermentation in its broadest sense is the conversion of sugar to energy. And if you've ever taken a hard run or a long bike ride and your legs start to burn, that's because humans ferment to lactic acid in their muscles and the acid begins to burn.
Rabble Rabble, no fear for tell them say you hear it, so remember to like, share and subscribe. Straight Rabblings.